Hi, it's Lipstick Gal. Thanks so much for watching today. I'm trying the new Sydney Grace and Glitzy Fritzy collab called Blessed. I have not made it a secret that Sydney Grace makes my favorite eyeshadow formula. I have so many Sydney Grace palettes. I was like, do I need this one? But when I took the time to take a look at it, this is what it looks like on the inside. It just really called to me. I wasn't sure that I was going to use like some of these shades here, but I'm bound and determined to see what they look like. If you're curious, this is already available for purchase and is $52 on the Sydney Grace website. Each one of these pans is 2 grams a piece and there's 15 eyeshadow pans in here. The other thing that I love about Sydney Grace is most of their eyeshadow palettes come in a light and a dark option, meaning that there will be slightly different shades between the two. I think in this palette there are 5 pans that are different, and it turns out being some of these kind of lighter shades. They make them just a little bit darker with a little bit more intensity for the dark palette. I always end up getting the light palettes because being a fair gal, it's probably the best for my skin tone, but I'm really excited to jump into here. If you're not familiar with Mary from Glitzy Fritzy, I will leave her YouTube channel linked in the description box down below, but I'm so excited. I'm gonna pop right into this. These are the pops of color right here that I was sure were gonna be the reason that this palette and I were not going to get along. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I don't need it. Look how pretty they are. The top one, the lavender one, is called Shy Guy. Kind of like the gold leaning green in the middle is called My Buttercup. The more lime green towards the bottom is called So Merry. And then the blue at the bottom is called Fritziness. Most of the rest of this palette tends to lean either slightly warm or slightly cool, but is very neutral in undertone. And I feel like there are some overlaps with other palettes that I have from Sydney Grace. But I feel like these shades right here are the ones that really are the distinguishing differences. So I'm gonna try and decide which one of these I'm gonna use today. I'm probably gonna go the greens. I love green eyeshadow, and I think that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna start building base colors knowing that I'm gonna be reaching for those 2 greens in the middle. So with a little bit of Cinnamon Girl here, I'm gonna start by just putting this in my crease. And I do have a little bit of eyeshadow primer down, and I have it set with just a little bit of my face powder today. I don't really feel like Sydney Grace eyeshadows need a primer. I feel like on my eye, I'm 48, I do have texture on my eye, but I don't have particularly oily eyelids. I did it today mainly because I wasn't wearing makeup earlier today. This came in the mail. I was having like a no makeup day and I had gotten skincare on my eyelids and I was like, well, they're a little oily because I put skincare on them, but normally I usually just make sure my lids are clean and I can go straight on with this and I don't need a primer. If you always like using a primer, these work beautifully over an eyeshadow primer. I just usually skip it. From here, I'm gonna dip into this shade right here called Family, and I'm gonna put that in the outside corner. This is a little bit, well, I don't know, maybe not. It seemed like it might be a slightly warmer dark brown than I'm used to reaching for. I usually like a slightly cooler brown, but this is pretty nice. I feel like I need to share it to the other side because they're pigmented. A couple weeks back, I did a Will I Buy It video where I was talking about new makeup items that were coming out, and this was one of those that was in there and I was kind of divided. I wasn't sure that I was planning on picking it up, but I think what really made the difference for me was taking the time to watch Mary's video about this. The way she described the shades, seeing those shades in action, and her doing multiple looks kind of really was like, yeah, I think I could use this palette. I've been kind of in a place where I'm not doing a ton of eye makeup. I think part of it is because it's starting to heat up. We're in the mid 90s today. It was really nice and cool earlier, and now it's like, yep, summer's here. And I feel like I tend to perspire a lot, and I tend to wear less eye makeup in the summer, but boy, this is really, I'm liking this. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this bright green shade here called So Merry. Look at that. Doesn't it look like a beetle wing? Love. And I'm gonna put this kind of like right here, mostly on the lid. The pressed pigments from Sydney Grace are so easy to distribute just with a finger. You can, of course, use a brush. We'll finish it with a brush, but I tend to get the most pigment right where I want it when I just tap it on with my finger. I'm going into this shade right here. This one is called My Buttercup. She named this one after Mel Thompson, and I was like, oh, I love that. Mel was the reason I started buying Sydney Grace eyeshadows in 2018, I think, and have continued to purchase. And I have always appreciated being introduced to products I wasn't sure were going to work for me, but Mel had impeccable taste. I'm just taking a little bit more of that first light brown shade called Cinnamon Girl, and I'm just kind of going over the edge of these greens here. The other thing I want to do is to take a little bit of this and tap it like right here, close to the lash line, like right in the center. When I was watching Mary's video about this, she was talking about this shade right here called My Savior. And she said she took a scraping of her favorite kind of cream colored eyeshadow of all time, which was Creme Brulee from Wet n Wild. This guy right here. I held on to this because I feel like I got a new, I think it's just called Brulee. It's not the same shade. This shade in Creme Brulee, this is probably really old. I'm really excited because this is always what I've used to kind of blend like the outside edge because it matches my skin tone pretty well. But I'm gonna do what I normally do with Creme Brulee or with a face powder. I'm just gonna dip into this first shade called My Savior right here, and I'm just gonna make sure all of my edges are not severe. I don't know if this is a good idea or not. I'm gonna take this shade right here called Be a Blessing. It is kind of like a champagne shade. I feel like I need a little light in the inner corner, not too much, not too much. So I'm gonna pick up a little bit of this and I'm just gonna hit like right here softly. Well, we'll see if it's soft in the end, but I usually tend to hit the inner corner pretty hard. I have a little bit of that medium brown that I put in the crease and the darker brown that I put in the outside corner on here. And I'm gonna run just the smallest amount of this right here under the eye. I'm gonna get it placed on both sides, wipe off the excess from my brush, and just come back and buff. This didn't take a lot of time because, first of all, I'm very familiar with the formulas from Sydney Grace. And I kind of knew I was wanting to go towards a more warm leaning eye with these kind of more golden green shades and the warmer browns, and then mixing it all out with a really light shade. It was just super, super easy for me to do. I'm gonna throw on some mascara and some liner, blush and lipstick. I didn't want to choose a blush until I knew what shade of eyeshadow I was putting on, and I will be right back. I am not surprised at all that I went the green route. I love green eyeshadow, especially kind of these warm goldeny green eyeshadows. I have, you know, if there's any color that I kind of gravitate towards, it's this shade of green. So I think that was one of the reasons this eyeshadow palette was kind of calling to me. For swatches, this is My Savior, Be a Blessing, Sugar Tiger, Pop Nyongi, Little Bit, Shy Guy, My Buttercup, So Mary, Pita, Cinnamon Girl, Fritziness, Irish Heat, High School BFF, Me After 60, and this last one here is Family. So if you're looking at these, I always love the way, I mean, like look at the way these guys shine and shift. They're just so, so beautiful. I think if you're looking at these by rows, you could build a really fun look with these shades here, with this top one here that is mostly rosy, or this one here that has these warmer neutrals and warmer greens in it. I am always gonna struggle to use a purple and to use kind of more of a turquoisey blue. That's just not my eyeshadow comfort zone. One thing I am trying to do this summer especially is to push myself outside of what I would normally do. And instead of trying to build a big, giant, bold look with all of the colors, pick one color, maybe two, and use those on the eyes. So you might see me in this blue or in this purple here, but I am loving the greens. Greens are really easy for me to wear. And if I'm gonna lean in towards an eyeshadow color, it's definitely gonna be the greens. This feels exactly like the Sydney Grace formula I'm used to seeing. Swatches the same, it applies the same. I think this eyeshadow palette is the perfect mix of usable, wearable neutrals, mattes, and shimmers, as well as those fun pops that can take you outside of your makeup comfort zone. Let me pull out a couple of other Sydney Grace palettes so we can look at what this color story looks like compared to a few others. These are both the light versions. Over here, the larger square shaped one is the Unbreakable Bond. Here is the new one from Glitzy Fritzy. I feel like we have some similar shades, not identical, but similar, with some of the warmer nudes and maybe some of those cooler, icier pinks, but it's not terribly close. This one here is the Be Mine palette. I feel like if we were to move like these two kind of rosy rows together, the top one here, the middle one here, you might have something that's kind of close-ish. I feel like the rest of it though is very, very different. Here is Mel Thompson's palette. I feel like we have some inspiration from a couple of shades, but mostly they're kind of different. I don't know that we're getting anything remarkably close. This right here is the Enduring Love palette. This is also in the light variation. I feel like maybe Peta and Cherish could be similar, and a little bit, and Darcy maybe a little bit, but I feel like we've definitely got a very different color story going here. It definitely has mostly cool tones with a few warm, and this one I feel has a good mix of warm and cool tones. This is the California Coast. I was really thinking about this when I was thinking about some of the rosy shades in the top row of the Glitzy Fritzy and the cooler tones that are matte. It kind of reminded me of this, but this being a 9-pan palette, it's reminiscent, but I don't know that we have identical shades here. But I feel like if you're really kind of pulled in for like these sorts of shades and these cooler ones in through here, if you already have this, you could probably get a very similar look. This is the Mountain Trail palette. I pulled it because it's really green and warm green leaning, but I feel like the two shades in here, My Buttercup and So Merry, are very different. This definitely has more of a gold lean to it overall, kind of like a baby puke, I hate to say that, and kind of a gold lean to it, where right here we're definitely a little bit more yellow in the greens. And of course the rest of the palette is distinctly different. This is the Summer Days palette. I was thinking about the mattes, like the mattes especially on this side here that lean a little bit warm, kind of reminded me of this. I don't feel like any of the pressed pigments in here match up with this. I feel like if you have a fairly large Sydney Grace eyeshadow collection, that you could probably, you know, pull a warm brown from here, a cool brown from there, and kind of get a similar look. This is the Coffee Talk palette. Both the Summer Days and the Coffee Talk are in the light variation. And I feel like there's not a lot of similarity here, not really. But I wanted to, I have a couple of others, but I just think that they're so far away from what this palette offers. I feel like this palette is different, but it has a lot of like similar notes. I do find that we'll get a shade like this or this in quite a few palettes. I do feel like we have like these cooler leaning mattes here or these warmer leaning mattes here. I do feel like I have another palette that has this shade in it as well as a pressed single. But this, I think, is a really interesting color story. I don't know that I would have picked these shades, but I like that they're not too saturated. Not really. I am really surprised. I was kind of like, I don't know, that's not for me. And I was going based solely not on, you know, Glitzy Fritzy or what Mary likes, you know, color-wise, but would this palette work for me? First of all, I'm glad I have it, but I also feel like it's going to work for me more than I thought it was going to. And I think a lot of it is just taking the time to play with it. I think that there is a lot of possibility with this. I'm excited to take it with me when I do a little bit of traveling this summer. But this is fantastic, and it is exactly the quality I expected from Sydney Grace. I am excited to see the looks that I get from this. You'll see me continuing to use it this summer, but I would love to know, is this the sort of thing that is calling to you? I like that we don't have like really dark extremes. You know, we've got not a black, not a dark brown. We have this here. We have a couple of really pretty light shades, a lot of shimmer. Give me a shimmer. I love. And I feel like this is doing all of that. I don't know, looking at it now, like, why did I think I didn't need it? I think it might have just been, I haven't really been doing a lot of eyeshadow, but sometimes all it takes is just a little spark of inspiration and I'm off and running. So you'll probably see quite a bit of this in the days to come. Let me know, have you picked this up? Is this a brand you've tried? Is this a brand that kind of calls to you? If you're curious, Sydney Grace does something every summer that I love. They do a Christmas in July sale. They usually start at kind of mid to late July. It's different every year, but they'll have a day where they have all of their singles on sale. and your girl loves singles. They'll have a day where they have like all of their palettes on sale. They'll have a day where if you make a purchase of a certain amount, they'll include a new 9-pan palette. This was one of last year's. This one right here is called Where the Wild Things Grow. I love that they do that. There are some really incredible color stories as well as like just stand out amazing eyeshadows on the Sydney Grace website. I've always had really good luck with their mystery bags, and because they know that everybody who loves the brand, we all come in different skin tones, they'll do bags that are for light skin, for deep skin. They'll do colorful eyeshadow bags and neutral eyeshadow bags because I'm not always gonna wanna buy the one that's, you know, like a cool with a bright pop of color. That's just not for me. But I love that they tell you kind of without telling you everything, here's what to expect in the bag. So there's a lot of fun things they do during their sale. If you already love Sydney Grace, let me know, did you get this? Are you excited? Are you a Glitzy Fritzy fan? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching today. I'll put my Sydney Grace playlist in the description bar if you want to see more. I do some swatches and looks with different palettes. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.